Jay, let's just look in each other's eyes.
But there's 4 of you. I don't.
That's really hard to do, yeah.
No, just me and you, Jay.
Oh, okay, okay. That's easy.
All right. Okay, so everybody that's here so far, thanks for tuning in. If you have comments, feel free to add them to the comment section. We're glad to be with you, and we're all anxious to answer any questions you have. And Sean the Best just said, "Hi, Jay, I'm Sean."
I told you.
Sean, are you from Italy?
Cool, Sean.
Are you the Italian Sean that Jay just called?
I think it was Italy. But it is the guy, yeah, that's the dude. His profile picture is him and Wes. I mean,
okay.
That's the guy.
Okay. Oh, Quinn's here. Glad you're here, Quinn. We liked your hat, Jay.
Thanks, it's made of cork.
Yeah, that's the shot.
That's the truth.
All right, so a question just for, well, it can be for all of you, but it was directed towards James and Amaran. And the question is, how do you, as you guys, so Amaran's has recently been associated with a lot of magnet props and like some mirror stuff. Jay's been associated with like, well, all kinds of unique props. And the question is, how can other people kind of incorporate those props into their acts without feeling like they're stealing or being accused of stealing ideas? It's kind of an intellectual property kind of question.
Yeah, I can. I'll jump in there first, and then Amaran, you can correct all my mistakes. Basically, we wrestled with this question with Renegade Design Lab because, for example, Tom and Iman, they made the triangle, the plastic triangle rings, you know, years ago, 15 years ago or something, and they're very identifiable, of course, within the normal juggling culture. And yeah, there was a few people who were like, "Hey, those triangles are super cool. I definitely don't want to buy them because everybody will just say that I'm stealing your thing or your trick or whatever." But then when we expanded Renegade Design Lab, we really tried to go towards some sort of Creative Commons 2.0 license with attribution credits and try to say that it is open source in that way, that the prop itself doesn't have to be the kind of the identifying characteristic, rather than it's the technique of what you do with it. And in that way, then it's just so much as like any other prop with clubs or balls or rings that you would do a trick and, hey, am I stealing this, or did I make this up on my own, or did I modify an existing technique? And I think in terms of this idea of Creative Commons with like share and share alike, open source with attribution, whatever it is, I think it kind of failed. I mean, it didn't really catch on in that way. You did get a lot of people still looking at the props and saying, well, that prop is a different prop, therefore that's kind of your thing, and I don't want to test those waters, or I don't want to you know, blaze those trails in terms of making it a ubiquitous you know, kind of, that's why I have my company called Fourth Shape, which was kind of a symbolic idea that you have balls, rings, and clubs, and what would be the fourth kind of most common thing that would catch on in the community. And I think there's a lot of contenders for that, but now it's Amaran's turn.
Well, like, I agree with much what you said. I feel that there's just so much technique to be explored. Like, there's like the stuff I do with magnetic clubs and the mirror rings. It's nothing. Like, the you can do like so much more different stuff. So feel free to go ahead and do it. If someone accuses you of stealing my stuff, then it's not going to be me that accuses you of that, at least, because I don't feel that way. Unless you like copy every single trick in like my video or something, maybe. But why would you do that? And it's just a video anyway. It's not like an act, so you could even do that if you want, I guess.
So it sounds like you're both saying it's less about the prop itself and more how you use the prop.
Yeah, but also I think in this day and age, especially with interconnectivity and the internet, it's just so easy to ask. I mean, if you see somebody using a prop, and I actually just had an email like a few days ago. Somebody wanted to do a twin clutch, this kind of double umbrella hook shape. And somebody said, hey, can I build one of those? And I said, yeah, that's awesome that you asked, and you should totally build one. I think it's just easy to ask, and it's fun too. Then you get to talk to people, and maybe they help you out. And if they're not happy with it, you also, then you know that as well, and you've tried, and then you have an answer. It's not a mystery, I guess.
All right. So a question for all of you: how do you think the flow arts has impacted juggling?
Do we paper, rock, scissors to know who goes first?
Oh yeah, from now on, I'll pick you. Aaron, you go first.
I'll
Actually,
raise my hand.
Aaron, do you have headphones on?
Yes. Am I echoing? Am I
I don't
echoing?
know if it's you, but it sounds like somebody is. There's anybody that doesn't hear a race car going by?
I just muted myself and it did not go away, so it's not me. So yeah, flow arts. I mean, I live in California, where I feel like the flow arts really kind of took off in a lot of ways. Fire Drums was one of the first flow arts festivals and such. So I've really seen how it's impacted the juggling scene in California, especially, and now throughout the U.S. And I know it's spread pretty much worldwide now as well. So yeah, it's an interesting concept. I feel like, the neat thing is there's lots more props coming in. One of the things I love seeing is like the hooping scene really exploding, and for me that brings in a lot more ladies, and also lots of people who started maybe just doing floor are now starting to do toss juggling and things like that. So it's pretty neat. But the floor it's a fun scene. It's different than juggling festivals a lot of the time. People get in their flow rather than necessarily the technical focus, but that's changing too. There's tons of technical focus within the flow scene too. Others? Thoughts?
Mike.
Sorry, I'm going to say Mike.
Okay, sorry. I don't really know, because in Southern Ontario anyway, there's not there's some flow scene, and I've kind of missed a couple potlucks that have happened on Sundays that apparently have been a flow and juggling meetup. From watching as much as I can on the internet, because that's what I do, I've really enjoyed a lot of the hybrid flow juggling, and whether that meant juggling poi, which I think is super, super cool and crazy. There was someone who also spun poi in circles while juggling 3 balls, and I think he does spinning rings on his hands too while juggling now, and that was really cool. I've been enjoying the hybrids, but I've kind of been watching it from afar. And Sean,
who was that, Mike? Sorry, I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Who was it that spins rings on their hands, just so we can credit to everybody?
Ito, right? Ito Juggler from Facebook.
Yeah.
Ito, IDO. Dude's awesome.
Or
Love
is
Ito.
it Ido?
No, it's Ito, because it's Ido. I don't know.
Ido.
It's IDO.
I don't know.
It's like Idaho without some letters.
I thought that would be an interesting question for you, Mike, since your expertise is box juggling, which is kind of, in a lot of ways, the opposite of flow juggling.
Yeah, I'm enjoying that the merger is happening. It hasn't really affected my juggling at this point, but it's cool seeing these people doing these things at festivals, and nothing but respect for them, for sure. It's super, super great to have them.
Mm-hmm. Mike, can you mute your thing for a second and see if it's you? And what do you think, Jay?
In the flow arts, it's funny because you get influence back and forth both ways in terms of what is valued these days. So, this is one thing that I thinking a lot about this, because you have tricks, you could say, let's say in the juggling world, that are technically, their value is in their technique or the skill. And then you have another type of trick that's valued because of its creativity or its aesthetic, its visual impact, you could say. And I think a lot of jugglers these days switch between the two. They're kind of interchangeable in one way. And it disturbs me a lot, because you can be watching someone and they're juggling and they do a trick that I think could be quite ugly, or it's shaky, or it's a struggle to do the trick. and everybody thinks it's super cool because, wow, what a cool hard trick that was. That was amazing that they managed to catch that ball or whatever. And then the very next thing they do is some sort of, ball isolation or arm swing or whatever. And then in terms of technique, it's nothing, I mean, compared to what they just did. But the value of that new move in the next moment of time is it's the aesthetics of it, or it's the flow, or it's the visual element. And I think it's really weird. It's really disconcerting to me that there's a lot of the new generation, they just kind of mix and match these techniques. And then when I'm watching something, I get really confused because I'm like, in one moment it should look really, let's say, beautiful or flowing or picturesque. And then kind of the next moment it just looks ugly, but it's a really hard trick. And so I think that's one thing just to be aware of, that people don't really, or yeah, it's kind of been unconsciously, this mixing isn't finished yet. What I mean, if you say how has the flow influenced the juggling, it's obviously a process that's still going on because we have these kind of dichotomies inside of sequences now. But overall, it's like you get the whole aesthetic of the swinging culture, like with club swinging or poi swinging. And that totally comes into what's valuable these days in terms of the, club juggling technique that's valued, like the lazies and the whatever. I don't know the names, but it's the whole flats, like flat fronts and all the Mike's. No, not Mike's mess, but there's the whole whatever. It's all these straight arm floaters with no spins, and I think that's also been kind of valued from the technical side of juggling. As something technically hard because we're just not used to those techniques. But then I think they originated from the aesthetics of the flow community. And then finally, just to say, you get a lot of flow jugglers who start off with flow, and then they kind of get into the toss juggling thing as a way to, validate what they're doing, which I think is kind of weird because it's almost like they abandon their roots in one way. But yeah. Anyway, there's a crossbreeding there between the two both ways, back and forth, and it's definitely not done yet. But you see the influence a lot on either side in terms of just pure technique.
Yeah, and I just to add to that, I feel like it isn't done yet, and I've also now started seeing some jugglers turning more into the flow side of things, who were more technically minded or whatever, and they started going to these flow festivals, and it totally shifted their technique and their style as well. And so it's interesting to see. I feel like it's happened a lot the last couple of years where it's starting to be less separate. It was very separate in the beginning, and I think now there's a lot more merging going on, and it's cool to see the different styles that's coming out because of that. Yeah, and just people playing more. But
I don't think we can really talk about this without mentioning Marvin Ong, who I think really pioneered a lot of this.
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna say I did an interview with him. I don't know when it'll come out, a few weeks ago, but it was really interesting listening to him kind of talk about this same question. And for him, it's like he has a lot of trouble, I think, seeing kind of how they're different. They're right. For him, it's like they can't exist for him without the other.
Yeah, and that's pretty much seen in California now. It's like you can't go to a festival, either a flow festival or a juggling festival, without both scenes being very strong. And they're just so integrated now. It's not like a separate thing anymore.
I think one thing that I would love to ask Amaran about this, because it's about the props, and because the flow arts, in one way, I don't say they're younger than the juggling, but certainly the popularity of flow arts is more recent than you could say with juggling, and yet already we have with the poi, you have like standardized poi, it's like you can go on the internet again and just like, I'm going to buy some poi. They're all generally the same size on the end, or you can get a few different sizes of the ball, the big ball, and you have the rope length that is more or less customizable, I'm sure, to the length of your arm or whatever the technique is. I don't understand. Yeah. And then you have the knobs that I'm sure are also different sizes, but more or less they're within the same range, I mean, they kind of all aesthetically look the same, and they're all pre-made to some extent, or manufactured. And but Amaran, how do you think about these flow art props? Do you see them becoming standardized, or how do you relate to that, to normal props?
Well, you can just make them yourself really easily, so I don't really see a reason for them to be standardized, I guess. just take a string and a tennis ball, and you can make some pretty nice poi.
I wonder how much the manufacturing process of the consistency of the materials adds to the possibility for the techniques. The more refined.
Yeah, and it's like
yeah.
A lot of the poi balls now are super. I mean, the weight of the ball, the length of the string, like you said. I know the first guy I met who, when I saw his poi, I was like, what just happened? I just moved back to California. I hadn't seen poi in maybe 5 years, like really strongly. And I saw the things he was doing and was just blown away. And he was like, yeah, I made my strings the length of clubs, specifically so I could throw the poi. And so it becomes a poi weight because of the weight of the ball, or a club weight, and also the length and everything. And it just shifted how poi looked as a whole. Yeah, go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, and I know people use swivels and stuff to make the strings not curl around so much, but like I'm not really sure if I'm not really into this so much, so maybe I'm not a good person to ask, I guess.
But you want to tell us? But Amaran, do you want to tell us? You were talking to me privately about these magnet poi with the strings in the tube. Or should I not have said that?
I didn't think about those as poi even. I thought about those like maybe asteriacs, because there's several. Yeah. It's like one connection point and many ends, So what about that? It's something entirely different, in my opinion.
Okay, cool. So Amaran's got some astrojacks coming out.
Can you tell us about those? I'm just interested now. Piqued my interest.
Well, yeah, it's just about making a prop that acts on this effect when you have something paramagnetic, I think it's called. So a magnet falls slowly through them, like a copper pipe, an aluminum pipe, and then you could have an open side of the pipe and like have a, asteriax is like one connection point and several ends, stuff like that. And you could, have like a funnel and throw them into the pipe, and they would fall slowly, and you could maybe make a whole juggling concept act thing around that.
Have you worked on anything yet, or have you made them yet?
Yeah, I just tried it a bit. I've got some aluminum pipes and stuff, and magnets, of course. So, but nothing much yet. No, not much.
So we'll look forward to a video in sometime.
Yeah, I don't know. A few months maybe. I'm not sure.
All right. What are some underexplored areas of juggling?
Boxes.
We don't know yet.
No, I think that's pretty easy. I mean, mixed props is the first one. It's just so easy. I mean, if you grab 2 rings and a ball, you're done, I mean, you can just make up 10 tricks straight away that you've never seen. I mean, really basic tricks, the most basic tricks, And in that way, mixed props, mixed of whatever. I mean, or take a Diablo and 2 balls, or take. I mean, didn't Jen Slaw and Tony Duncan? They did the cigar box and the ball rolling on 2 boxes and a ball. I mean, any sort of the traditional prop combinations, you're already far ahead of anybody else, because nobody consistently works on that stuff. That's what I think. That's the biggest one.
Another big one for me is mixed skills. So juggling combined with other skill sets, be it dancing. I mean, it's been explored a lot, but I think there's still a lot of room for that. Flexibility, contortion, quick change artistry has always been one I've wanted to see. Quick change with juggling, I thought would be awesome. But combining those different skill sets and combining them with juggling.
Quick change would be cool.
Yeah.
Mike or Amaran, any other?
No, it's.
I feel like. Oh yeah, go ahead, Amaran.
Well, I think they bring up good points. Like, there are definitely huge areas which are not very much explored, and also very low-hanging, so to say. Like, you can get into it very quickly and start doing new stuff. So I'd probably go with mixed skills and mixed objects.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think Ito is a perfect example of that. He makes poi and balls and then posts it online, and now everybody kind of knows him as the poi and balls guy. So, yeah.
Ring a Bolo was a big one. Rings with Diablos was when I saw starting to become really popular a couple years ago. Cool combination.
What were you going to say, Mike?
Oh, the way I think about this isn't so much as where the low-hanging fruit is, because juggling is so young and the surrounding kind of techniques are so young that it's really easy to find something new. And if you're not finding something new, it's probably because you're thinking about it in a very classical way. And I kind of like to add restrictions until I'm forced to come up with something new. And that's kind of why I like 3-ball boxes so much. Like that was kind of an arbitrary restriction I've imposed upon myself. But if you really just focus on something, even if it's already relatively well explored, like boxes where 3 balls, if you restrict yourself to that, then you're forced to come up with new technique. You're forced to think about it more than other people have. So you can add complexity by adding different props or adding different skills. You can also reduce complexity. And I think exploring both of those is really useful.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. I mean, that's awesome. And I mean, in terms of unexplored areas with juggling, like juggling journalism, that's like, we could think about juggling as more than just the physical act of it. Like, what's the surrounding culture? Again, I talked a little bit about that with you before, Sean. And but yeah, just like juggling journalism, I'd like to see more blogs or published content, more podcasts or whatever. Also, just like whatever sponsorship, prop sponsorship or business, or there's a lot of infrastructure of juggling that could definitely be more developed and more explored as well, to not forget about the side of things like that.
And I think also looking at the parts of the world that maybe we don't know as much about in regards to the juggling scenes, and that's obviously been bursted open because of the internet, and that's awesome, but Ethiopia for me was like the big one where when I first found the jugglers there, I was like, what? These guys are insane, and nobody really knew about them, and now because of videos, like it's all over. But yeah, different regions of the world, what those styles are, and what their styles lend to as far as other explorations. Like, people just juggle differently in different regions of the world. Japan kids, I could never be a Japan kid as much as I want to be, and same thing, South America has their like machines. So just looking at how people in different regions of the world can explore different things as well.
That reminds me of, in one of my recent highlight reels, I don't know if it was last week or not, but I highlighted a video of like a traditional Korean dance that had plate spinning in it. And I didn't do any research on that community, but it looked like it was, a community that had it didn't have contact with the rest of the world. Like, it was that kind of traditional like show. They were bringing back things from when they didn't have contact with the world, I mean. So the idea that kind of these different strains of juggling develop totally autonomously of one another, and therefore have different characteristics that we can learn from.
Yeah. And I think one example is like with Ethiopia, why do they have so many amazing bounce jugglers? It's because they got a bunch of bounce balls from Cirque du Soleil back in the 90s, and all the other props broke, but the bounce balls stayed solid like for years and don't break, and so they became amazing bounce jugglers, and that's fascinating.
Totally.
So one of the things you mentioned, Jay, is this idea that juggling can happen in other areas. It's not just about the act of juggling. Another question that was asked is how much of juggling is like conscious or mental, and how much is physical. And I think we could also ask, how much of juggling is, I don't know, outside of us altogether. Without asking what juggling is, because I did that question probably got asked 10 times. What is juggling? But I feel like you should know that, people.
I mean, most of juggling is. Okay, it's a crazy question. Is it mental or physical? How much is mental? How much is physical? For me, it's mostly mental. I mean, yeah. I mean, of course, there's the physical preparation that gives you the mental confidence, but in the end, it's just mental. And I mean, without getting into the whole am I a performer or not a performer debate, like for example, I listened to Mike on the podcast, and he wasn't so much a performer, and we could say I am a performer. I mean, at least for me as a performer, it's all mental. It's like 110% mental. And I used to have different sorts of philosophies or kind of mantras that would get me through the shows. I remember when I was 18, I was always thinking I'd be in rehearsal that day, and I would do the trick 10 times in a row, and I would go on stage that night, and I would just think, okay, let's just do it one more time. Just one more time. I did it 10 times already. There's just some people watching this last time. And that kind of got me through a few years of some good shows. And then that slowly, mentally, your game starts to change. But for me, it's just all mental. I mean, of course, and again, the mental part is you have that physical skill set to back up your mental confidence. But at the same time, I don't know what I think now these days about the juggling on stage, but I know for a long time recently I was always thinking, hey, I can drop on stage just as well if I practiced or not. So if I'm going to practice in the day, I might as well, I don't know, it's a weird thing for me, but I might as well just go ahead and catch it on stage, because if I'm going to drop tonight in the show, I could have just watched TV all day and had the same result. So I don't know, maybe that's a little bit weird, but
I feel like that would put pressure on me, and I would drop more.
I don't know.
Any other thoughts on that?
Like Mike, because you said you're not such a performer, how do you think about the physical, mental kind of preparation or experience?
If we're talking about mental preparation as in being able to perform under pressure or in that kind of regard, that's an area that I have focused very, very little on, because most of my contributions to juggling are in the form of workshops, in the form of videos. I perform rarely, so it really doesn't matter to me much if I drop. The reason I'm going to practice is so that I can get something solid enough to move on to the next stage, rather than solid enough that I can perform it. So to me, the mental part of juggling is largely in practicing technique and being able to get the most out of a practice session that I possibly can, thinking about when I should be starting, when I should be stopping, what I should be thinking about while I'm actually doing this practice. And that's most of the mentality for me. The physical aspect of juggling, I mean, I move my hands fast sometimes, but like it's not that physically demanding. Sometimes it can be very demanding in a precision type of way. And I think of these completely differently, because if I'm juggling, or if I'm trying to juggle 9 balls, it's exhausting, it's tiring, and I need precision, but at the same time I need strength and I need endurance. Whereas when I got injured, actually, is when I learned blind behind the head, because I didn't need any strength, I didn't need any endurance, all I required was precision. So when I think about the physical aspect of juggling, I kind of break it down into strength and precision in that way.
Mm-hmm. We should add that Mike said he doesn't really care about dropping, but he doesn't really drop. He went at the RIT Juggling Festival. He won like 50% of the juggling competitions.
Well, I feel no pressure to drop or not drop, so I guess it overcomes that psychological aspect for me.
Emron, what do you think?
Yeah, it's like it's totally mental. I would always just think about juggling all the day. Back in the day when I practiced a lot and got good at juggling, I think I probably was thinking more about juggling than I was juggling, I guess. So I think it's all in your head, basically. If it's not, like Mike says, the trick actually requires a certain amount of strength or precision, and you have to, hammer that out. I mean, oftentimes it kind of does, I guess, but
I think
if you know how the trick works, it will be so much easier.
I think it probably changes depending on what skill level you are as a juggler. I think people who have been juggling for years, it's going to be much more a cognitive thing. Whereas people, obviously you can't juggle 5 balls if you can't juggle 5 balls. So I think there might be kind of a, it changes.
I think, well, you can't juggle, period, if you can't physically move. It's just, and I say this just because I have, I have a different perspective, having had many injuries throughout my juggling career and breaking my back and such, and so periods of not being able to juggle at all. So for me, it is a very physical thing. But at the same time, that being said, during those time periods when I couldn't juggle, it was watching videos of myself, watching videos of others, and how much I would learn and how much I would progress just from the mental side was always really impressive. And same thing, like even training or practicing routines or anything like that. I think video goes a long ways because I'll train for a certain amount of time and then go back and watch the video, and I feel like I learn more watching the video. Critiquing myself, things like that, really analyzing what could be better, what could improve, than in the physical state. So I think there's definitely a balance there.
I mean, there's the thing. Obviously, I don't know firsthand, but there's the legend that Nick would never let Anthony really hang out with other jugglers because he didn't want Anthony to know that what Anthony was doing was quote unquote impossible. And the story goes that the first time Anthony ever did 8 rings in a show, whatever age he was, 8 or 9, 10 years old, whatever it is, Nick was on stage, his assistant giving him props, and at one point Nick just gives Anthony another ring after he does 7 rings, and then Anthony goes, "Oh, okay, I do the 8 rings now." And it just happened in that show organically, and Anthony never thought about it. The mental state he's in is just like, okay, I trust my dad, and he's my coach, and okay, I just do it. And I think that's a pretty crazy.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, a pretty crazy thing, that just to realize that we all do grow up in this environment, and it is the whole 8 club flash thing. Now everybody can do 8 club flashes, and now there's been a couple people doing the 9 club flash. So we know that humanly it's possible, and so more people will do it, and we're waiting for the impossible 10 club flash at this point. But it is this whole expectation of that you're born into this context, this community, and what's your frame of reference for what is mentally possible or whatever.
Yeah, and I think what's so cool now is looking at how the internet has sped up the process of impossibility being ruled possible in a very fast level, because now you can think something's impossible and you can essentially find it on the internet if it's been done. And so it has now people who are just beginners suddenly have this realm of possibility that's far greater than what it was without video.
Some of the things, Mike and Aaron, you were talking about injuries a little bit and how it kind of forced you to go explore juggling in different ways. What is the best way for people to deal with injuries?
Aaron, do you want to take that one first?
Sure. Yeah, listen to your body. I think that's the number one thing I've learned over and over, is it's like when you have an injury, which I feel a lot of jugglers do eventually get wrist problems or shoulder problems or things like that. It's good to listen to the body and not push it. Let the body rest how it needs to, and also talk to the pros. Go see a doctor. For me, it was a physical therapist that taught me what I needed to know about shoulder muscle structure in order to support what I was doing with overheads or whatever I was doing with certain tricks and things. So talk to the pros who can tell you how to heal faster and more efficiently, and listen to your body. You know it best, so don't push it. Even though it's like, for me, it was always like, oh, but I just want to get it. I just want to get it one more time, and so I'd push and push, and then too much. So yeah, stop before.
Yeah, I definitely learned that the hard way. In the first year of university, I did really well on exams because I buggered up my elbows pretty badly because I thought the pain was just like, oh yeah, it's whatever. It'll be better by tomorrow. And I kept practicing and practicing, and it got worse, and I was out of juggling for like 4 months, and it really sucked. That's probably not very long for you, Aaron, based on your. But for me, it was a really long time.
It's all relative, yeah.
Yeah. So from that, I actually learned how to listen to my body. So that was really nice, and I try not to exit the juggling community even if I'm injured. And most of my injuries have come in my elbows. So when I can't juggle at all, I'll try footbagging, and I'll still go to juggling club, and I'll suck at footbagging for a long time. but I'll make slight progress. And one of my favorite parts of an injury, if I have a favorite part of an injury, is when you're nearly better. So like you can juggle, but you can't do anything fast. And that's when I learned a lot of my weird stuff, like behind the head. That's when I learned squeeze catches, because I had those restrictions, and I couldn't throw high, I couldn't throw fast. I just had to. I had to juggle, like that's non-negotiable. But I couldn't do certain things.
Yeah. Yeah, and just for me it was that's how I got into working with the IJA was through having an injury and not being able to juggle. And somebody was like, "Want to run for the board?" And I was like, "Well, I've got a lot of passion for juggling, and so I might as well continue doing juggling-focused things." And so that's how I got on the board, and now I can juggle again, but I'm also still having a great time with that. So
look for the silver lining.
yeah, silver lining. It's always there.
Great. All right, so Jay, one of the things that we talked about in our interview was the biggest thing we talked about was the language of juggling. You know, what does everything mean? And you were just kind of throwing out in passing. You're like, what is a throw? What is a catch? So somebody decided to ask that question. What is a throw? What is a catch?
Well, should I let somebody else go first and then?
Yeah, let's start with Amran.
Well, yeah. What is a throw and a catch?
I'll save you.
Thanks.
Amran, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, right. No, but I mean, a throw and a catch. The only thing we can say for sure at this point, I think, is that I think you should have no matter what definition you have, it should be consistently carried out throughout your work until you have sufficient evidence to change your definition otherwise. So where my throw and catch might be different than what your throw and catch is, at least I'm different every single time I explore what it means to have a throw and a catch. I don't know if we ever need to have exactly I mean, it would be great at one point to have a definition of juggling that everybody agrees on, a definition of a throw that everybody agrees on. But at least for now, just to realize that those things are undefined, and at least you can start to have a personal relationship to that definition. I think that's the most valuable thing that we can do currently, because beyond that, to get more concrete, it doesn't seem possible at the moment. And one thing I was thinking of recently, since we last talked, was that this throw and catch thing, again, normally a throw, we have so many mental images attached to that the object's going to go up. We're going to use our hand. We just have so many ingrained starting points for that word. But these days, you know, it's your foot, it's your elbow, it's your head, it's your body, it's your shoulder, it's whatever. It's another prop. A prop is throwing another prop, etc. And in terms of a catch, I think it comes down to a lot of times the word intention. But I hate that word intention because intention is easily hidden. And I think it's much better if everything is concrete, that you can really say without a shadow of a doubt, instead of saying, oh, it was just my opinion, it was a catch. But yeah, it's kind of what you intend to do. And one last thing, and then I'll shut up. But it's like in the rhythm of techniques, when you talk about throw and a catch, it really denotes a starting point and an ending point. And so when you say the word catch, for example, if you're swinging poi, or if you're doing again, these flow arts are good examples that have a kind of a different rhythmic time scale. How do you know you've caught the trick? And in one way, catching the trick is it's aesthetically pleasing, or you've achieved a certain visual effect. So that's why, again, if I think about mixing techniques up, it's kind of funny. You know, you could literally physically catch the object, but in the end you maybe failed the trick. So then did you catch the trick? It's like, what is your goal? What is your end intention? And we could just say very just a little example would be Emile Dahl's 9-club flash versus Willie Colombione's 9-club flash. Is a funny comparison.
Something that really resonated with me from Jay, your interview with Sean a while ago, was that a definition should be useful to you. And I actually will change my definition of a throw and a catch or a success and a failure based on the type of things that I'm practicing, depending on whether it's useful to me and what will allow me to not only better analyze my success and my practice in a certain thing, but also find new ways of doing that, find variations of that kind of thing.
So catch can be very, very subjective, but you, whatever it is, you need to make sure that it's consistent for whatever you're working on. Talking with Quinn, I don't know if we talked about this in an interview or not. He was talking about as a big thing that he's been practicing recently is where the ball lands in his hand. And so, to us, the catch might look perfectly fine, but to him, it might have been off, a whole centimeter. All right. What defines a good or bad juggler?
Magnets.
No, I actually like this question. So if you guys don't come up with anything, I'll give you an answer.
All right, I have an opinion on this because I think there are two ways of thinking about it. The first one, like you can say, oh man, that guy's a bad juggler. He or she can't even juggle 5 balls or something like that. And I don't really like that. It's potentially a useful judgment if you're being summative and deciding if someone gets into circus school or something like that. I don't know. Another way of saying a good or bad juggler, I think, is whether or not they're trying to improve or whether or not juggling is being useful for them in some way. In my mind, the only way that you can fail at juggling is by giving up without intention. That's more me thinking out loud than a well thought out answer.
Anybody have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll dare to say something. I could try to say something useful. Obviously, this is you could get pretty metaphorical on this, but if we look at technique in one way, when I was young, I heard this thing that there's throwers and catchers, right? So there's people who are good at throwing, like that's their thing, is they throw very accurately, and I think you see that in the work of with Yuri, who's coaching in Kiev, and the Russian style is really a lot about, or maybe some Russian style and some Ukrainian style. It's really about throwing accurately, and so you concentrate on the throws to make them the most accurate possible. And then if they're a little bit wrong, they fall to the floor because you don't want to break your form. You're trying to have perfect form to make the perfect throw. Mm-hmm. And then you have catchers who just catch everything and they throw terribly, but they manage to save everything. And so Sean McKinney was the example of the catcher. Like he was the best catcher who ever lived, and his catches were amazing and beautiful. And then I could say in the answer to the question, what makes a good juggler or a bad juggler, is of course in the perfect world you're not a thrower or a catcher, you're both, right? I mean, just to say you should throw well and you should catch well, and I guess then you'd be the best juggler. And then if you're a bad juggler, you're not good at throwing and you're not good at catching, and then you're screwed.
Yes.
Yes.
I like that a lot, because I have in the teaching realm, it's like I've found some people who it's just the catching and the throwing both are not there, and it's hard to say, oh, you'll be a good juggler someday in that moment, because it's sometimes if you don't have the right coordination to make those first steps, it's hard to progress. So yes, definition.
I think that I'm more along the lines of Mike here. I actually think that saying good or bad juggler, I think using the words good or bad is kind of useless. I think those are bad words to use. I think just what is a juggler or what isn't a juggler might be a better question, or what was really being asked. And then the word you use instead of good or bad juggler is what makes a skillful juggler or what makes an unskilled juggler, which I think we kind of all know the answer to. And that's what we're talking about. Good throws, good catches, someone who's clearly put time into the craft. But what makes a juggler, I think, is someone who is there's forward motion in their juggling. And if there's no forward motion, then I guess you could say you're a bad juggler.
Even if you can juggle 7 club?
Yeah, I think so. You're a skilled juggler, but you're a bad juggler.
Oh. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and in general, I have that same view of if you're working and you're enjoying it and you're working hard and you're making progress for your own self, and you can, compare where you're at now to where you were, be it a month ago, be it a year ago, whatever, and feel confident and that you've been successful in your own work, then good on you.
For the next question, are we done with this topic, first of all?
Yes, sure.
Okay, because there's a question that's getting some buzz in the chat that I think is a cool question too. And it is, talk about the differences between people who started juggling as children and those who started later on in life. Is there a difference? What does it look like? That kind of thing.
Amron, when did you learn?
16. So I guess that comes as later on in life, right?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I also
so do you find your approach to it different than someone else who started it earlier?
Hey, Matan, if you're still watching, throw in your 2 cents in the comments.
There he is. Are you back, Imran?
What do you think, Mike?
I tend to see there being a difference. Maybe not so much once those young jugglers actually age, but when I see these young jugglers on YouTube. Oh, is Amron back?
I think the internet here in Sweden is broken.
Okay, I'll talk a little bit more, and hopefully Amron gets back within that time. I tend to see the young jugglers who started young to be more focused on a certain goal, and I think often that goal is numbers or technique. That's what I see them practicing the most, or at least that's what they post videos of the most. And I think the people who started older will work on getting a technique, but then work more quickly on branching out. Matt Hall, I think, would be a good example of that. He's good at a lot of things. He doesn't have God 9-ball technique, but at the same time, he kills it with Diablo, he kills it with breakdancing, BMX, like, he's got a lot of cool stuff.
Amram, we didn't actually hear anything you said, so you want to answer the question again? How do you think it has or hasn't affected you that you started late?
Yeah. Well. I think it's a really hard question. It's hard for me to relate because I don't know how people who started early, what their experiences are.
Yeah.
But Amron, when you started, were you concerned that you had to learn everything, or were you just focused on certain things that were in front of your nose at the time, or how did you position yourself inside of the vast world of the new thing when you found it?
Well, I just went for whatever was in front of me, I think, to begin with, yeah. And then my juggling was very much shaped from just practicing in my room, I guess, a lot. So.
Matan got back and said he doesn't know how it impacts him, but he thinks it was good.
Then that's one area of juggling that could be more explored.
Yeah, there you go.
I think one way that it affects it is when kids learn, it becomes a thing of muscle memory. Juggling is muscle memory in general. But when you establish it at such a young age, it does seem that it becomes just kind of second nature. Whereas I feel like people who learn when they're older don't necessarily have that same ingrained feel, and it may feel more like a struggle in the beginning, probably it settles in eventually. But I think the muscle memory part for young people is good. You know, and again, I think nowadays, because I learned when I was 11 and never learned anything or any tricks because I knew no other jugglers for years. And so, you know, I think it depends too. I think now kids being able to see videos and learn whatever they want in whatever style, and that there are all kinds of different styles at a young age, that it gives them the choice to kind of go the direction that they want to within juggling.
I feel like, I feel like this hasn't been explored really well, because obviously someone who starts late but just naturally good is, you know, just as good as a lot of people who started young. But there's got to be something that's different, because in a lot of ways I think juggling uses the same part of the brain as language, and we know that kids, you know, acquire languages super easy when they're young. So, yeah, I don't think we have a good answer for it, but it's got to be a good thing. Tony says you got a nice beard, Amram.
Thanks.
I'm lacking in that department.
Yeah, he says Aaron's beard sucks.
Totally sucks.
She started too late.
I did. Started when I was younger. For
Yeah.
Sure. Let's see here. There's a lot of people ask the question, and we've all thought about this, but how much of juggling should be about the sport? How much should be about the art? How much should be about the performance?
Let's take a time machine back to 2003 to answer the question.
Totally. That one's been answered a couple times.
Sorry. I mean,
See,
100%.
Total, 100% total when you add them all up.
Yes. Or 100% plus 100% for 200.
Yeah.
Like, I see it as different people are gonna pursue different stuff. Like the way that I juggle, I do not consider it an art at all. I'm certainly not saying that juggling is not an art or juggling cannot be an art, but it's not the way I choose to pursue juggling. I don't really choose to pursue it as a sport either, because I'm not doing it for the sake of difficulty or like physical stress. I see it as a way of some way that I can come up with interesting things and play around. So maybe more of a science, because I do things in a very systematic way, a similar way that I do things in my day job. But like, I can see juggling, I have seen juggling be an art, be a science, be a sport. Like, I think it thrives in any of those situations, and it really depends on who's doing it and how they're doing it.
I can share a short story. I'm definitely not trying to be pretentious. I'm trying to think of useful things to say in the moment about these questions that are quite large. And I mean, it's good that you're picking these questions, Sean. They're good questions, but they're also obviously quite hard to nail down a consistent answer or even a specific answer sometimes, because everything is so wide open and flexible. Obviously, juggling is juggling, and it can be looked at through the lens of art or through the lens of sport. And mostly what makes the juggling technique in one area, it's the same technique in both areas. You're just kind of putting the context around it. But I was in Germany, I don't know, a few weeks ago. I was doing a gig with an orchestra, and there was a newspaper reporter who wanted to interview me about, I was juggling with this classical music orchestra, and it was quite unusual or whatever. And they said, okay, so people are going to come see the show, so what do you have to say to them who they think they're going to expect to see a clown with a red nose up on stage? And I said, yeah, but I'm not answering your question. We're past this now. We don't need to actually talk about it anymore. Maybe there was a period of time where that was an interesting debate, that we had to justify contemporary circus, and we had to justify that juggling could be something more than I don't know, than tricks 100 years ago in a ring full of sawdust, etc. No, nothing wrong with that, by the way. But in terms of looking at it through this frame of higher culture, etc., I said that's, and again, I wasn't trying to be rude to the reporter, but I do get a bit frustrated sometimes that we spend all of our time, our precious time. Like, I never get to talk to you guys. I never get to talk to Aaron enough, or Amron, or my two new friends now, and that we would spend our time, like with this reporter, that he's interviewing me, who's been juggling for 30 years, and I should talk to him about some clown with a red nose, about some stereotype that is just perpetuated through these questions. I find it really annoying. And the art versus sport thing, I think the debate's been dead for a while in my mind. And for sure, it's good to revisit those things and remind ourselves of that. And maybe the debate has shifted, and so sure, it's not bad to think about it. But just in general, my point is that we kind of take for granted a lot of these. We assume a lot of things, but the way we speak about them is important, and we can kind of get past a lot of these issues with juggling and in the community just by the way we talk about them and the way we approach the subject, and being a bit more careful with the words we use. I mean, art versus sport, honestly, I don't care. I mean, go juggle, done.
Juggle, done. I was going to say juggling is juggling, but then it comes back to the question of what is juggling. But agreed. Agreed. But it's an old question, and it's one that I think each person can identify for themselves. Like, we don't have to do that as a community because there are so many different formats at this point. It's not art. It's not. I mean, okay, it is art. It is sport. It's videography. It's journalism. It's it's organization. It's community. It's all kinds of things now beyond just those two topics. So if you're going to ask, is juggling this or that? Remember, it can be all these other things for different people too.
Right on.
Yeah. So, and again, it brings it back to that personal kind of subjective part of juggling. Juggling is all of those things, and you should probably explore all of those things. But where you're at, or what you emphasize or what you're best at may be different than somebody else, and that's okay.
Yeah, I kind of love that people do all the different things because it means I don't have to. It's kind of a relief. A lot of times I'll see somebody do a trick, and I'm just like, oh, I'm so glad they did that. It looks hard. or somebody makes a podcast, and I'm like, that's so cool, there's a podcast. I don't have time to make one, but I appreciate that there is one. And it's nice that everybody's doing all these different things, so you don't have to feel pressure that you have to be in one way or another way. And again, just to maybe try to sum up this whole art versus sport, there was a really nice way to say it back in the day when we were arguing this, which was a lot of people were asking. I was teaching in Paris a master class, and a kid came up and he said, hey, I don't know how to spend my time. I just started juggling. There's so many things to practice, and I don't know if I should learn technique or I should learn creativity. And it's kind of the art versus sport thing. And he said, should I learn 7-ball cascade or should I learn all the 3-ball tricks? And obviously the answer is you should learn all the 3-ball tricks with 7 balls, because that's where juggling is going. I mean, that's the ultimate thing. Why would you limit yourself to one or the other? And if you could do those 3-ball tricks with 7 balls, you would. I mean, just to be clear, you would do that. So why not shoot for that?
Mm-hmm. All right, we got a couple more questions. Where do you find your inspiration? And I'm going to ask more specifically for each of you. Amron, where do you find your inspiration to keep making new things and exploring new ideas? I think he might be frozen. he's got that look. All right. Aaron, where do you find your inspiration to, let's see, we'll make it about dance for you. Where do you find your inspiration to explore a new style of dance for your juggling?
Can I answer a different what inspires me question?
Sure, why not?
Is that allowed? Okay. Because dance, I have fun with it, and I dance in my living room to lots of different styles of music, and that's really inspiration there. But something different that's a big focus for me right now is just inspiration for organizing stuff and just to bring up IJ, just because that's a big part of my life right now, and just community and the juggling community and where it's going, and like helping do some of this whole community organizing work stuff. Can I answer that instead, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, lately it's been super cool to see what's happening in different regions of the world, and like Japan's obviously killing it, and South America right now is just insane with the juggling scene. In Chile right now, we're working with a group called Organic Juggling, and they have these groups gatherings once a month that are attracting upwards of 1,200 to 1,500 different jugglers each month, which is awesome. They say that they've like taken juggling from being a hippie thing that it's been in South America for a long time to being something that's like got a lot of street cred and super highly respected in the community now, and everyone wants to be a juggler, and kind of turning into this whole like skating scene where it's like rare for a kid to walk down the street without having a club in a backpack. And so yeah, it's just exciting to see how much juggling is kind of exploding right now on the worldwide level, and I feel like circus in general is doing that too. There's kind of a big revolution happening in the circus world, and being able to use the internet to empower that and foster it and make it happen faster is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Great. Jay, where do you find your inspiration to think of new props?
Amaran. Yeah, but actually, Amaran and I, we talk a lot on private messaging, and yeah, he's a genius, and I get a lot of inspiration out of talking to him. And in terms of inspiration for, it's a little bit like what Mike was saying about the limitations. Right now, the best we can do is, I call it, it's just destructive editing, where it's like we can cut things apart very easily. I can take a club and cut a hole in it much easier than I can mold another appendage to the body. So we have a lot of destructive creativity in one way, where you're destroying the form to make a new form. And that kind of limitation does also, again, push into, you have to find creative solutions within your means. And I assume that when new manufacturing processes come around, or people like Amaran who are really seriously looking into making their own props, new prop manufacturers, then we're going to have new inspiration. But for now, it's a lot of just the limits of our ability, I think, is inspiring a lot of the creativity in terms of like how can you modify, if you're talking specifically new prop shapes.
Mm-hmm. For everybody watching, everyone wasn't feeling well and his computer was dying, so he had to go. Send him a message and tell him you hope he feels better, and maybe he'll feel better because of it. Were you going to say something, Jay?
No, I agree.
Okay. Mike, where do you find inspiration, period? That's all I'm going to ask you.
Where do I find inspiration, period? I'm going to assume you're talking about with juggling. That's non-optional. That's what I'm going to be talking about.
All right, fine.
All right, so my inspiration kind of comes and goes, and I think that shows in some of my juggling. When I'm not inspired, I practice just kind of bare technique, so that when I am inspired, I can do what I want to do more easily. The things that do tend to inspire me are occasional like super killer videos that come out of like Murakami back in the day was killing it, and videos that make me feel like a bad juggler when I watch them first, and then a year later I come back to them and I'm like, okay, I can handle this now. Then I find them inspiring. Also, there's like a handful of people in the juggling community who like really seem to enjoy and try to, I don't know, they sometimes practice what I do. They do similar things. Yeah, they do similar things to me. And I really like seeing what they come up with from sometimes my stuff, and I try to steal and mold all the stuff I can from them. And yeah, so like certain videos and certain jugglers, when I see them at fests, like when I go to the IJA, when I talk to Dan Barron, Michael Falkov, Andrew Olson, Quinn Lewis, Jake, like going to a fest and talking to these people and leeching out their enthusiasm for what they're doing can keep me going for months.
Okay. So for you, it's the other people.
Yeah, I steal enthusiasm and inspiration from others.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that's for all of us, or for everybody that's answered so far, it's the other people in one way or the other. I want to note that you said that you watch videos and they make you feel like a bad juggler, and I just want to point out that you feel like an unskilled juggler. Remind yourself that you're a good juggler.
Well, sometimes it does make me feel like I am not improving when I see them improving much faster than I am. But yeah, both. I feel bad and unskilled sometimes.
All right, so Jay, during our conversation, we talked about this idea of jugglers deciding what, some things we should be working on. So what do you guys think the juggling community should be working towards right now? And no, there's no wrong answers here, and you don't have to limit to, like, if you say one thing, it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that they should be working towards. But, yeah.
Personally, I think what the juggling community is currently working towards is awesome, and I think the juggling community should keep doing that.
Wait, you're saying that the juggling community is just going and it should just keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going in some really amazing directions on all levels, and yeah, pretty impressed with it right now.
I was actually going to ask a question. Because yeah, since we last talked, I mean, this is related to answering your question now, and so I might as well jump into it. So since I talked to you, there's been a couple people who reached out to me on email, and one guy in particular was talking about making some sort of internet meeting place of jugglers, or a central point on the internet. And in terms of what's one thing we should all be working towards, I don't know if it's, like you say, a right or wrong answer, but I am really curious about this idea of having some sort of successor to the IJDB, Internet Juggling Database, that closed down many, many years ago. And so I've been working on a bit of a sketch of what such an online community might be or might have. And so I have a question for you guys, actually, or a question for the community in general, since your question was what should we be working on. And what if I said, okay, what if we had a kind of ultimate website? And I framed this question also in the way of the idea that Facebook is basically central to everybody's life now. And I acknowledge that for sure there won't be another website that was as central as the IJDB, because now we have Facebook to do that for us. And then the question becomes, what content would be on that website that would draw you away from Facebook at least 3 times a week in your busy life, in your digital life that everybody's trying to escape being on the computer more, being online more. Your time is really precious. Like now Instagram went from 15-second videos to minute-long videos, and it's super annoying because I don't have a minute to watch your video.
I was wondering why they were so long. I didn't know that it had changed. I was like, how'd this person hack Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, and it's just kind of funny because I'm here thinking about a whole new website that I want people to frequent. I want everybody to go check out this website as a juggler, and then here I am complaining about stupid videos being like a few seconds longer because I don't have enough time for them. But so what do you guys think? What if there was a website that was cool enough or had basically enough relevant content to you that would draw you away from your normal online habits, like say up to 3 times a week, or I mean once a day and maybe at least 3 times a week? What would that content be? What would those features be?
Everybody else, feel free to comment. Pornography?
I mean, you can also frame it if you don't have an immediate answer. You can also frame it and say, what do the what does Facebook lack, right? That you could find useful.
One way that I would look at it is instead of what does Facebook lack, but what do the current juggling communities, what draws me to them? The thing that kills me about Juggling Rock is that I can't find a video from 2 days ago that I want to watch.
Yep.
So to me, it needs to be indexed, and it needs to be indexed really well.
Right.
If it didn't chase users away, I'd like some kind of like mandatory tagging type thing. Like I'm putting up a video, give 3 words about what it's about to let me find it in a month. That kind of thing. Hard to enforce, I guess. Another thing that I like about Juggling Edge is it's a nice chill place to talk about juggling, and it doesn't have to be about any current event. It can be about whatever you want to talk about juggling, as long even if it's not about juggling. I got a great hummus recipe off of Juggling Edge, but like normally it's about juggling, and it's a pretty free discussion. I kind of want those two things to be decoupled. So otherwise, I think that the Juggling Rock type of here's my video, here's my video, here's my video type of thing would completely swamp out any more relaxed discussion. So I see it needing a couple parts and needing to be searchable, I guess, is my one-sentence summary of that.
Audita said something that I think is interesting. He said, tracking your skill compared to others, I would love to compete in getting the most catches. I think I see that as kind of like gamifying it a little bit.
And that was something that Juggling Rec had, was like tracking your records. I used that like crazy back in the Juggling Rec days.
I think I'm not really active on Juggling Edge because I don't get how it works, but I think there's a practice log that you can log your practice, and maybe even a records log. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, they're distinct. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
I was just going to say a thing for me that I've really appreciated about Facebook is, and this I think would be a hard thing to do, and one thing that I'm wary of outside websites is the translation element, and it's something that has become so easy to communicate with people from every different region of the world with a click of the button of translating, and so that's something I feel always was lacking on like Rec.Juggling. That's why people didn't really know much about the Spanish-speaking world, because they had their own things probably, whereas it was all the English speakers that would frequent that site. So it's like how can it become a really international welcoming place?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there are the French language forum, there's the Italian language forum, are the dominant ones, and the Spanish language forums, and yeah, I agree. That would be so cool that they would be all integrated with like you say, the little button there just to translate straight away. I was just thinking really simple things too, like you have a portal, a front page to the forum or whatever the discussion, or a couple of forums, whatever it is. And just on the front page, you have like a photo of the day, and then you have like this day in juggling history with maybe a photo, and then you have like an events calendar, which is like today there's this festival, or there's a countdown to the next festival, or whatever, So there's just like a little front page. And then, of course, I talked to a few people about this, and of course they're like, yeah, well, I wouldn't go to the website. I would just look at the Instagram feed of the photo of the day, or I would subscribe to the Twitter feed of the historical juggling fact of the day, or whatever. So it would be kind of, it's kind of this weird thing about keeping content exclusive, but also having, spreading it around as much as possible and all of that. So I'm just trying to think about little things that I would find personally interesting. Like if there was a website that did like, a photo a day, a history fact a day, and what's the event that's coming up, I would totally check that out a few times a week, especially if it linked to a searchable forum and a database and maybe a record collection. And I got a bunch of other random ideas too. But if people have responses about that out there, send them to Sean and or the Everyday Juggler, comment, whatever. And we'll check it out. And I have to shape up my proposal. I don't really have it in public shape yet, but I should definitely post it. And I mean, it's a community thing, and see what people say before we make it. But yeah, I'm thinking about that right now, and it would be awesome if I said, go ahead.
I think another cool feature would be somehow integrating all the different places that people post videos. and have a sort of an interface like Reddit where people can upvote things, so that people can still go to Reddit and they can still go to Facebook and they can scroll through everything and find videos, but every week just be able to see if they just want to see the top 3 videos that were upvoted.
Yep.
That would be cool. I really like the idea of gamifying it too. Like, you know, I don't know who's the juggling king this week.
Yeah.
But then we might get in fights.
Who's the artist? No. Who's the winner this week?
Best, but everything.
Oh yeah, we could have a sport category.
There you go.
Artist category.
The art category is what we would fight over. The sport one, that's easy. Totally.
And yeah, that place for discussion that was actually brought up in the YouTube chat. I see people were saying, "Hey, this talk's pretty fun. It's too bad we can't do this more often. Maybe we should have a weekly chat." And so that's actually been something throughout our conversation that they've been chatting about. So having that place, I think, is a cool idea.
There's been times when I was trying to like keep up with it, and I was like, man, I wish I was just chatting with everybody.
Oh, they're going off over there. I just want to recognize that I am enjoying all of your guys' comments.
I feel left out in here. Well, I think we've touched on some good stuff. I think that's probably good for now. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I have a question.
Let's hear it.
Maybe my last question. Okay. So let's say I have a ball in my. Can you see this?
I do.
I have to describe this to the people listening on iTunes because I only ever listen to your podcast on iTunes when I run. So it sucks when there's visual things that I can't see. So I have a ball in my right hand and my left hand is empty. And if I tell you that in the next moment of time, you must do some juggling with your left hand, is that possible? And what if my answer to that was, okay, so I'm going to do some juggling now in the next moment of time with my left, using my left hand, yeah? And I go like this. And I take the ball from my right hand with my left hand. Is that valid? Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah? So the question then becomes more clearly, you could say, how come we say that my left hand is taking the ball and not my right hand is giving the ball?
I would say you are juggling with both hands. One is catching, one is throwing.
So, and again, not to get stuck on the definition, like literal definition, but if I said in the next moment of time, do some juggling using only your left hand, you don't think it's a possible task. It's impossible because you would have to always be using both hands.
Well, you see, like if the hand with the ball does zero motion, but the other hand retrieves something from it, can doing zero motion still be juggling? Is that
that's what I'm
heard of what you're asking?
Yeah, dude, you're right on. That's exactly it. It's awesome.
Say that again, Mike. I was still thinking about something else, and I missed what you said.
All right, what do I have? I have this water bottle here. So the idea is if I need to use only this hand, and I take this hand hasn't moved at all. Has it thrown? Like it's done zero motion, but was it still juggling because it has lost the ball, and we would normally call that a throw? Or a drop, which again is part of juggling. Like you can drop into a catch.
Yes, you're totally right on, dude.
I'm gonna say that's still juggling because I imagine like people doing that Statue of Liberty or waterfall trick, and their hand's just sitting there, and the ball's knocking off of it, and that hand is still involved in the juggling. So yes, that is my answer so far.
When you're bounce juggling, is the floor juggling? Who says you need an object at all to actually juggle?
I do.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. All right, so what do you think about this virtual reality juggling stuff?
The balls are still there. They're just virtual.
No, you have to draw the line. You have to draw the line somewhere.
All right.
Yeah, okay, I'll say it like this: virtual reality juggling is juggling if you don't know it's virtual reality.
What if if you're juggling 2 balls in this hand and you're doing something with this hand, can you still say that this hand's juggling even if it's not touching those balls?
That's a super cool question.
That's really what I meant.
That's a super cool question. Yeah, I mean, of course you are, because you do have some juggling at some point in your system there, physically connected to it. But that's a really cool idea. I'm gonna have to think about that.
I'll have to say though, I do a lot of juggling practice without any objects. But
are you juggling in that moment, or you're just practicing for your juggling?
Movement, dance, yeah.
No, I mean, it comes back to this idea of what's a throw and catch.
Thing. Right.
Yeah, and you have to just draw the line somewhere for yourself personally. And so I just say personally for me, you have to have an object to juggle, and in terms of like, yeah, all these ideas of what's a throw and a catch and a drop, it's all just personal, subjective. So then I say virtual reality isn't juggling. Again, unless you don't know it's virtual reality, and then there is no spoon. Red pill, blue pill, matrix. But yeah, it's all personal definitions. But I love those 2 ideas from you, Mike and Sean. I mean, exactly the point. The hand doesn't move. Does it still throw? Is it a take or is it a give? And then Sean, like you say, is your one hand is juggling and the other with props, and the other hand doesn't have any props. So what is it doing? And then it's just these subjective ideas. But anyway, that's what we've been working on in Sweden this past week with the circus students in class. So I thought I would ask you. It was kind of fun.
Cool.
Really useful things.
All right, if you guys are okay with it, I actually have one question too.
All right.
And that is, how do you decide which patterns or tricks not to do? For example, you see someone do something really cool, and you go either, man, I want to learn that, or no, I'm not learning that.
Aaron,
or man, that's awesome, but I have no desire whatsoever to learn it. And I think it's that initial gut reaction thing, because there is, I mean, for me, there's obviously the people that we're inspired by, but I'm gonna be far more inclined. Number one, I have a specific prop I like to work with, so that's gonna be where I'm gonna go. And then, what my skill level is, what my interest is, what my focus of the moment is, and how cool that person looks.
Yeah, if they're from Japan or not. If they're from Japan, learn it. I mean, yeah, it's just the intuition, but I think the intuition is geared towards the potential of whatever specific thing you're interested to explore. So if you have some sort of intuition that it might lead you somewhere else, then go for it. I mean, it's also just a matter of logistics. A lot of times you'll see something and you say, oh, maybe I'll learn that so I could combine it with something else. Maybe you have something in mind and then you just realize I don't have time to learn that, So just a lot of times, like, there's this mix between the mundane, practical, everyday, logistical concerns, and then this kind of inspiration where you are hit with something and you say, wow, this is amazing, that could be really cool. And then it's always just kind of a balance between those 2 things, I guess.
My intention with that was more even specific. So I probably asked it in a very general way. But if you had 3 things, I don't do tricks or patterns that involve this, this, or this. And try to make them relatively specific. Like, I don't do tricks that involve dry erase markers. Sure, you probably don't, but like as relevant to your juggling as you can. For example, and all of these are preceded with, unless there's a compelling reason to.
Right.
Unless there's a compelling reason to, I don't do tricks with multiplexes. So what are some of your criteria like that?
I don't juggle with hats because I don't have any. Not
Fair enough.
Yeah, like as close to your actual juggling as you can get. What is the stuff close to your actual juggling that you do not do?
Wrist traps. I'm too old. I missed it. I missed out on that.
Contortion.
Yeah. No, yeah. Contortion.
That contortion trick, I try it, but my shoulders, I've got short arms, It just doesn't work for my body. I wanted it, but it didn't work.
I feel like I feel like you're kind of asking Mike what is whether it's a prop or a style, what is it that makes us avoid that certain prop or style? But I feel like if that is what you're asking, I feel like for the most part, we would love to be able to do everything. Like, doesn't every juggler want to be able to do all the different?
Well, sure, but realistically, you're not going to be able to.
So then we're talking about like physical limitations, or just what you can't do.
Or interest at all. Like I love balls right now. I have no desire to do other props right now. Like that's not my jam. And so it's like, I fought that for a long time. I tried to learn all these different props, and then I just realized I really like juggling ball. I'm just going to roll with that and see what I can come up with that. So I think, there are certain things that I think when you're young, like we talked about this earlier, when you're younger and you're learning and your eyes are just open to the juggling world and you can learn all these different things, then you can go for that. But then, I've been in the game for a while, so it's like now I know what I like and I know what my body likes to do and what I have the most fun with, and that's what I choose to do.
But Mike, I want to know why you don't do multiplex.
Why I don't do multiplex?
Yeah.
Autoplex?
Multiplex.
Okay.
It's a big world. I think it's underexplored, and it's one of those restrictions that I've put on myself. I think it's too big a world, and if I went into it, I'd be spreading myself too thin. But that's the way I treat a lot of types of things. Like
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes a lot of sense. I can relate to that totally.
Yeah, I'm naturally, for some reason, I'm really bad at shower patterns, so I stay away from those.
You mean you're unskilled at shower patterns?
Oh man, totally right.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question too? Do I get to ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so I spent a lot of time focusing on this concept of juggling community and what that means and where it's going and how it's getting there. And I know like Jay touched on his cool page thing, and I think that's totally a community element. But I'd just be interested in hearing other people's perspectives on kind of where things are going and or where you hope they're going and strategies for getting there.
Yeah, that was a big question that we got, so it's a good way to
I remember
wrap this up.
Cool.
It's a big question, and I think one of us has thought about it more than the others. I'm gonna say I think there's just so many ways you can go with this. I think where's juggling going in the I would hope that juggling becomes more normal. That's where I want it to go. That's a different question, though.
No,
I'm going to pass.
That's kind of what I mean.
Where I hope it to go?
In line with it is that normalization type concept.
I hope that juggling becomes more normal and mainstream, like Jay and I were talking about on our podcast. I think that it would be great if juggling wasn't seen as sort of a subculture in a looked down on sort of way, which I think it is now. Like jugglers are weird, jugglers are clowns. I think is the mainstream idea of jugglers. And I would love for juggling to be a little bit more normal. And I think it's going that direction. But I think something that's going to prevent that from happening is just that juggling takes practice and time, and you can naturally look at someone juggling and go, that's hard. I know that's hard. I can't do that, and just decide I can't do that.
Right. But so does skateboarding, and so does breakdancing. And so
right,
music.
I know.
All of those take time, and all of those are pretty mainstream at this point. So. Any other thoughts?
Mike?
As for how we can branch out and how we can expand the community, I leave the real work to the masters like Aaron, but something that I try to do is just whenever I'm practicing in a public place and someone stops to look, I'll offer to teach them, unless there are times when I'm really focused and I'm training, and in which case blinders are on, I'm not talking to people, and I'll be polite, but I'll try to just get back to juggling. But otherwise, when I'm at juggling club, my goal is to improve my club members' experience, but also to kind of lasso those people that you can tell from the way they're looking at it, they're like, man, I kind of want to try that. But there's that activation energy. It's hard for someone to walk up to a group of people juggling and be like, can I try? For a lot of people anyway. So I try to pull in people who I think want to juggle. But that's more of what I'm doing rather than a prescriptive what people should be doing. I guess people should be doing that.
Cool.
In my discussion with David Nair way back when, a long time ago, he was talking about teaching people how to juggle, and he had a student that didn't have arms, I think is what it was, and so juggling for that person was hula hooping, and just kind of to be able to, as a community, if we want the community to grow, then we have to be able to recognize. We have to be able to be empathetic with other people that are interested and teach them ways to kind of express their maybe desire to juggle, or ways that their life can be more complete by juggling.
I kind of had a little epiphany the day after I talked to you last time, Sean, on your podcast, and because as I struggled and mumbled through the whole interview, I kind of felt I was searching to articulate something. And it was great to talk to you because I think the next day I kind of figured out, or maybe immediately after we went off air, I figured out what we were talking about. And it was this idea that you had kind of expressed that we all start off generally. I think all of us here on this interview or this conversation right now, we kind of all started off randomly. Like we started off as hobbyists, and we started off haphazardly and just we had influences from here and there, and it was just organic, and it just progressed, and everything was fine for a long time. And then at some point in your life, for whatever reason, you start to think, hey, I'm investing a lot of time in this juggling thing. Where is it all going for me? You have to start to weigh your time of I'm going to go practice now versus I'm going to go do something else, right? At some point in your journey as a juggler, this process happened to all of us, and that is some sort of idea about maturing and going forward with your practice and what are your goals. And I think, in terms of Aaron's question about the community, maybe what we were talking about on our previous conversation is this idea that as a community, especially in relationship to the internet, right, we are kind of young, and we are going forward, and we're just learning, getting different resources, inspirations from here and there. And maybe what I was saying before was more that perhaps we're at the time now to start to think about, as a community, where we might want to go, in the same way that we've all done that with our personal journey. Because I feel there's so much potential, there's so much energy, there's so many things happening all over the world, and we learn more about each other, we learn more about who else is out there, and what they're doing, and what is possible. And so pretty soon, I think, in the next few years, we would have the possibility to really start to have a longer vision, as we all did when we were younger, and you just start doing, cigar boxes and devil sticks and Diablos and yo-yos and blah, 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 and then you start to realize, I don't have time to practice them all, and then you start to make choices. And it's not that one's right or wrong, and we've all had great, experiences with juggling for sure. So as a community, it's not like we have to go in one certain direction, but I do feel there's some sort of potential that we could start to harness and explore things, I don't know, deeper or more in a more meaningful way, or a more targeted way, or at an accelerated pace, for better or worse. I mean, that's already happening with technique and videos and whatever. So that's kind of what I was trying to think about before, that, yeah, as a collective community, perhaps we were starting to mature enough that we could have these discussions like we're having now, and with some forethought into what direction we're going to put our energy and resources to carry on in the future.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and it's a cool hat too. Yeah, and I'm reading the thread too. I just did a moment ago. People were talking about how they as well have found that it's not, how it's a kind of abnormal thing to do juggling in a lot of our communities, I think, and in a lot of places around the world. And it's been associated with clowns. It's been associated with, nerds and the U.S. culture anyhow. And it's a stereotype that some people are faced with. And I think the cool thing about what I've been doing, like in traveling to, especially South America and Latin America in general, I've just been really impressed with what's going on there. Is they are creating massive juggling communities and this culture in a way that I feel like we could be modeled for other parts of the world that want it to be that, but where there's 2,000, 3,000 jugglers in Mexico City now. There's 3,000 jugglers in Santiago, Chile, and that's just one city, and they hang out together and they're super active online. And it's like, I get to see all the back end stuff for the IJ of Facebook and Instagram and all that. And they, masses, thousands of people from Latin America all the time are just super active. And now they're starting to organize things. Like there's this new thing called OLAM, which is the Organization of Latin American Jugglers, but in Spanish. And they have representatives that are directors of this from, I think it's like maybe 13 different countries now that are representative. There's Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, Mexico, Costa Rica, like all these different Latin American countries, and they're forming an association just for all the people within that region, and they're starting to organize. Like they had a day when every 8 different countries had a variety show that one day, and they all, did group publicity about it together. They covered it online in one central spot, but also in all of their own individual spots. So they're just creating a cool scene. And like I asked somebody, I said, so it seems, this is like 4 years ago now, I was like, so it seems that juggling is really popular in Chile. And he goes, esta la moda, which is, it's the fashion to be a juggler right now. It's like the cool thing to do, which I feel like all of us kind of want that. And that's, I think it's happening now in certain places. It's the same in Japan. I think it's starting to be that way as well. And so, it's being modeled what can be. And I think it has that very skater kind of like energy of where the skaters were in the 70s.
Does that mean we're all going to start dressing the same? I hope.
Well, that's one part of it. That's one part of it. Again, the cool thing is there's so many different branches of juggling that it can all go in a different direction. But like the energy in Chile is they all wear their little skater hats. They all have their little backpacks with their clubs, and it's pretty fun. So yeah, it's just exciting to see. And then because I do work with the IJ, it's just cool to see how you can use an organization to help support that. And I guess whatever organization that is, in the world, like using that as a format to bring the community together on a worldwide platform. It'd be fun.
All right. Well, I feel like we should talk more about where the juggling is going at some point, because I think that we could. I think there's a lot of things to talk about there. But I think for now we are good. And I'm going to ask one more question for everybody else, and that is, if we do this again, who do you want to see on the panel? For the 22 people that have stuck it out the whole time, or you probably came late. But thanks for being around all the way to the end. And give a big thank you to Mike, Amran, Jay, and Aaron for coming on too. And thanks, guys, for coming and talking.
Awesome.
My pleasure.
I hope that we can have some more great conversations in the future. And we love you too, Jay. That is a heart, right? It's
Sunbeam.
All right. So I guess that's all. You guys good?
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for hosting this.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
Sweet.
thanks for taking the time. And really nice to see you, Aaron and Mike, as well.
Yeah, you guys too. Very nice.
See you guys.
All right. Until next time,
Have a great day.
everybody, keep on juggling.
Yeah, thanks for all the listeners. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Ciao.